Okay, I think I'm live right now on Twitch. That's the idea. So, it's been a long time since I've done a Twitch stream. Sorry I've been away so long, and even right now I'm sick and I'm tired. I just got home from working overnight at Walmart all night long. I'm in the maintenance department, so I clean the floors, I clean people's shit out of the toilets, I do the nastiest, dirtiest work there. So I'm around a lot of germs and I get sick a lot. But the purpose of today's stream is actually to share something very special. So there is a program I wrote. I've written about it on my blog. I've shared the source code on the Flat Assembler forums. It's called chastehex. Now, you might wonder, what is the purpose of this program? What is the purpose of this program that I spent hours writing in assembly language? Now, there's also a C version. You don't have to use the assembly language version. You can also compile the C version or download the executable files. Like I actually have a GitHub repository where you can download the Linux or the Windows executable files. You don't have to even look at the source code if you don't want to, because I just tried to make this program available to anyone who wants it. But I've designed it in a very specific way. The way I've designed the program, I could go on about forever. But the purpose of today's stream is I want to show you how chastehex can be used to cheat at video games. I know it's weird. Yes, I spent a lot of time in this program, and this is only one of the things you can do with chastehex, because chastehex can technically do almost anything you can imagine, because it is a command line hex editor. This gives you a lot of flexibility in what you can do. But cheating at video games is how I got my start in computer programming. So here's how it works. You use a hex editor to edit the bytes and hexadecimal of a save file of a video game. Now keep in mind, this doesn't work on modern video games. No, it doesn't. Not anymore. Because modern video games, they use encryption, compression, and all sorts of anti-cheat methods to make sure that people don't hack the save file. So this doesn't work in most games of the 21st century. But today, I'm going to be showing you a game called Castle of the Winds that I used to play back when I was a young kid. I played this Windows 3.1 game called Castle of the Winds. And it runs in 16-bit Windows and even ran in 32-bit Windows. Like it ran on Windows 95, 98, and XP to a certain extent, but it crashed a lot in Windows XP. Now, my laptop that I'm using right now has Windows 11. It's 64-bit Windows, and ordinarily it does not run 16-bit Windows programs, normally. But you see, I have installed an emulator. I think it's based off of Wine. It's called OTVDM. And I don't know what it stands for, but I installed it. I just followed the directions. I downloaded it off of the GitHub repository and installed it. And now I can run Castle of the Winds on Windows 11 on my laptop. I tried to get it working on Linux, but I ran into trouble because in order to install Wine from the repository, it wanted to uninstall my SDL libraries, and I'm like, no way, my Tetris game that I made uses the SDL libraries on the system, so I wasn't going to mess with that. And since I don't care what happens to my Windows laptop, I thought, why not see if I can get a 16-bit Windows game to run on 64-bit Windows? And I did. And today I'm going to prove to you not only that Castle of the Winds runs on Windows 11 once you install this program. I won't be covering about that program specifically because I'm not an expert in it. I installed it, and I can even provide the link to that if you want me to, because it comes with instructions. But I'm going to switch to desktop view, and I'm going to show you Castle of the Winds, because this is a game that was from the 90s, and most people who are younger than me will not have even ever seen this game. This is an old game, and I loved this game because it was a fun game. To me, it was like Final Fantasy. It was a roguelike dungeon exploring game, and it was a lot of fun. So I'm going to show you Castle of the Winds, and then I'm going to show you what my program chastehex can do to this game. So we're going to switch to desktop view. This is OBS Studio here. Hopefully you can still hear me, but you won't see me because I'm showing you my screen here. So, okay, this is where I normally keep my save files here. So this is Castle 1, the folder. So these are the files for Castle of the Winds. I actually have I have Castle of the Winds Part 1 and 2, but right now I've only extracted Part 1. We're going to launch castle1.exe, and it's going to be running soon. Okay, so notice it's running wine otvdm. I don't know if you can see that, but it's running .wine otvdm. It's running an emulator to emulate a 16-bit Windows environment. Note now, I know this text is small. It might be hard to read, but it's the original text. Also, this game is now freeware. It's published by Epic Mega Games, and it's now freeware because at the time it was made, it was shareware and you had to pay for it. But now they've made it just free because it's so old, the author doesn't even care about it. They can't make money off of it because most people can't even run this game. But now you can. So here's Castle of the Winds, Part 1, A Question of Vengeance. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start a new game. So here, when you have your character creation screen, you have your game difficulty. There's easy, intermediate, difficult, experts only. I'm just going to go with easy for right now, and I'm going to change gender to female. Like literally, you have a choice of male or female. So basically, if you choose male, you're naked except you have underwear, and if you choose female, well, you have underwear and half of a shirt, and a nice belly button. That's the difference between male and female there. Okay, so you have your basic stats. You have your strength. You can choose your levels of these. There's a certain amount of maximum stat points. There's an amount available when you make a stat goes down, then you can make other stats go up. It has a limited amount of stats you can choose. So you could make a character that's strong but not very intelligent, or you could have a character with low constitution. Now, constitution determines your hit points, low constitution and low hit points. Dexterity determines your accuracy and your ability to disarm traps, and strength is your physical damage, how much damage you do. Now, that's all from memory. I just remember because I used to play this game like 30 years ago, so I remember some things, but I could be totally getting it wrong. There are help files, but I don't usually read the help files. I just wing it. But a long time ago, I did read the help files. But anyway, so basically, here's what I'm going to do. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to make a character that is high dexterity, and very intelligent, and low constitution. So I'm just going to make this character. So, and you get to choose your first spell. Heal minor wounds, detect objects, light, magic arrow, phase door, and shield. So here's what we're going to do. I am going to, now you see, this is where you start at. You start in this town. What I like to do here is I like to save. I'm going to save, and what I'm going to do is we're going to go in this folder, and I'm going to choose to save the file as Chastity, my name Chastity. So let's see. Okay, I'm trying to make sure. Did it save? Yes, chastity.cwg, Castle Winds game, basically. So I saved a save file. So now let's look at my character here. We look at my character here. We see the stats, that we see what the character looks like, and we see that I only have 7 hit points and 5 mana points, which is your magic points. So that's the stats that we have when we created it. But here's the beauty of it. Before I begin playing the actual game and showing you what the game is like, I'm going to use chastehex to totally ruin this game. Okay, so basically, okay, let me get back to my file explorer, and we're going to go to this folder. This is the file, this is the folder where it has my save file. It's 4.11 kilobytes. And I have a script here. Basically, we're going to open this in Notepad++. This, once it loads up, wait, okay. This is a batch script that I wrote. It's a very simple bash script, and it runs 2 commands. Both of these are chastehex commands. So the name of the program is chastehex. The name of the file that we're trying to modify, the address that we're going to modify happens after the file name, and then all the bytes following the address are the bytes that you're writing to that address. So here's what we're going to do. I am going to simply run this script. We're going to exit out of here, and here's what we do. We're going to open this in the terminal. Let's do dir to look at the directory. We see all the files in here. This is like a DOS type of window here. It's the command line within Windows, but it looks a lot like DOS. So we're going to do cotw-hex.bat. So I run that, and you see what it did there. So you see the commands it ran, and notice it says seek, and then it seeks to that address, and then it writes those bytes to that location starting at that address and then continuing. So what it's doing here is first it maxes out the experience points that start at address 9E in hexadecimal, and then it also is modifying the stats, trying to max out the stats by replacing all those bytes with 7F. So we've modified bytes in that file. We've modified bytes in that file, which is really, really cool. But let's load the save file. Now that we've modified the save file, we're going to go to the menu. We're going to load the save file that we just saved. And let's look at the character. Now, would you look at that? See how all the stats are now at their highest level? That is because I set them to 7F. And I just want to explain, why did I set those bytes to 7F? Because if you set them to 80 or higher, they become negative 28 or lower. Like they basically become negative numbers if you set them any higher than 7F. I figured that out through trial and error. So now we have maxed out the character stats and also the experience points. So now that we have maxed out the character's experience points, now notice that our hit points is still only 7, and our mana is 5. So now we're going to begin actually playing the game. So I'm going to, I know the screen is small. I don't know how to control the resolution of this very well. Plus, it was designed for much lower resolution screens. It wasn't designed for Windows 11, but by a miracle, I got it running. So we see here that we are entering a dungeon here. We're entering, okay, this is a good thing. So now we're going to save. We're going to save the game right here because there is actually a chance I could die. So here's what you do. When you see a kobold, this is called a kobold. And I right click and it says you see uninjured kobold. Here's what you do. When an enemy is not next to you, but you can see it, you use your magic arrow spell. So then you click on that monster, and notice how it says, welcome to level 2. The magic arrow hit the kobold. Welcome to level 2. And then it lets me choose available spells. So I'm level 2. Oh, I'm level 3. Hey, look, I leveled up. I'm learning all the spells. I'm learning all the spells. And notice every time I click OK, notice that my hit points and mana points have gone up. They've gone up because since my constitution and my intelligence stats are maxed out, then the hit points and mana that I gain per level also goes higher. So now I am learning all these powerful spells. I'm just choosing the default spell that it gives me. So basically, okay, I'm level 27, level 29. Okay, now I'm going to save. Let's look at my character here. My stats are maxed out. My character level is 29. My character has 649 hit points and 701 mana points. So basically, my character is all powerful at this stage. Now let's cast a spell. We're going to cast Detect Monsters. And now we can see here uninjured giant rat. So there are rats here. Let's see, can we detect any other things? Oh, hey, let's try the clairvoyant spell. Let's see what this does. See, it reveals part of the map. So now here's what we're going to do. Now I can safely go over here and I can attack these rats. Now, I don't advocate violence in real life, but this is a video game, so these are not real rats. They do not feel pain. The giant rat is dead. The giant rat is dead. I wiped out those giant rats with no trouble because my character is max level already, basically they have all their stats the maximum possible value. They're level 29. Their hit points and mana points have gone up. And so now this allows me to play through the game and just enjoy the storyline. Yes, there is actually a storyline to this game, but it's mostly exploration. So here there is a goblin. Now, I want to show you something very unique about this game. If we save the game before we go downstairs, so look at this. We're on a new level. There's new monsters to fight. There's new treasures. You can pick up these treasures. You can press G to pick up the treasures. I don't know how I remember that, but 20, 30 years ago, that's what I used to do, is I used to read the directions, and I used to know how to play the game better than I do now. I've forgotten a lot. But basically, here's how it works is you go down the stairs and you discover a whole new level. You don't know, it's randomly generated. You don't know what is going to be where. And oh, I just found a door. You press S to search the area and you find secret doors. But now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to reload the save file and we're back at where we were before we went down the stairs. So now if I go down the stairs, we're in an entirely different level. So basically, here's what you can do. When you're playing the game, you can save before you go down the stairs. You can go down there, fight the monsters, you can collect the items. And if you don't like the level that generates, you can just reload the save file to before you went down the stairs, and it will automatically generate an entirely different level. So basically, this game has infinite replay value because every time you play it's different. Every single time that you play this game, you're going to have a different level, different randomly generated monsters, different items with different enchantments. This is a very unique game, and this is my favorite game back when I played games on Windows 3.1, which ran on top of DOS back on an 802.86 processor I had back in the 90s. It was I just got teleported by a teleport trap. That's crazy. So my character is all powerful here. Let's save because I like this level. We look at the inventory. Now I have a dagger, I have a pack, I have a purse that holds the money. I found a scroll, and I don't know what the scroll does. So what can I do with this scroll? Okay, I put the scroll in my hand and I can activate it. So now what happened? Did the scroll do anything? I don't even know if the scroll did anything. But anyway, I think I've made my point in that Castle of the Winds is a great game, but also my character is all powerful. basically, because I used a program to hack the file. I hacked the save file. Okay, I'm going to exit the game, and then I'm just going to check and see if I have any comments. No, I don't currently have any comments here on Twitch right now. That's totally all right. It doesn't matter that much because I'm recording this to explain something. So let me just explain something. So I showed you how I made a batch script that runs my own program, chastehex. And I covered a little bit about how chastehex works. But I want to show you an example of how chastehex actually works. Here was the beauty of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back to desktop view. We're going to go in an entirely empty folder where there are no files, and we're going to use chastehex to construct a basic file. And this is not scripted. This is just my own knowledge of my program because I wrote it. So what I'm going to do here, so we're going to go here. Let's go to the downloads folder. This is my downloads folder. And let me make sure, okay, I'm going to exit this command prompt. We're going to the downloads folder, and we're going to open in terminal here. So this is the downloads folder in Microsoft Windows. If we do the dir command, we see there are no files. We also see that I have 11 gigabytes free on this hard drive, which is not very much. It's full of games on this Windows system. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to type in the name of my program. It's called chastehex. So welcome to chastehex, the tool for reading and writing bytes of a file. To hex dump an entire file, chastehex file. To read a single byte at an address, chastehex file address. To write a single byte at an address, chastehex file address value. So it does program, when you run it with no arguments, it displays some basic instructions on how to operate it. So in file and address, and value, those are all just placeholders. They can be anything. For example, let's say if we do chastehex, and then let's make a file named dude. We're just going to make a file named dude. Okay, but notice when I do this, when I do chastehex dude, it says opening dude error 2. That means the file doesn't exist because my program doesn't actually create the file. It doesn't actually create the file. So here's what we're going to actually do. We're going to create a basic file by the use of the echo command. So let us use the echo command, and let's just say let's just do echo Walmart, and let's redirect the standard output to a file named dude. So now we see that there is a file named dude that is 10 bytes. So now we're going to type chastehex dude. And then there are the bytes of the file. Now we know what the file actually contains, because if we run type dude, it shows in hex that it says Walmart. But chastehex, it displays it in hexadecimal. So, for example, if I were to see, normally if you just enter the name of the program, chastehex, and the name of the file, it displays the entire file. But we can also read and write individual bytes of that file. So if we start it at address 0, notice it shows the address 0, which contains 57. If we do address 1, it just shows a 61. But if we set it to address 10, which is of course 16 because it's 10 hexadecimal, it shows address 10 EOF, which means end of file. So basically, we know that it's end of file because there are no bytes at that address. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to write bytes at that address. So let's do this command. And now what we're going to do here is we are going to write some bytes. So let's try doing, how about we will just write some basic bytes such as 5 1, 5 2, 5 3, and then 6 4, 6 5, 6 6. So those are hexadecimal bytes, and we are writing those starting at just 1 0. So now we're going to run this command, and notice that it goes to that address 1 0, and then it starts writing the bytes that we gave it as argument after the address. So now let's try this. Let's rerun the program, but let's just type the name of the program and dude. Notice that it has all of the bytes it had before, but then starting address 1 0, it has those bytes that we wrote to it. So let's try something. Let's try the type command and give it dude. And notice how it still has Walmart, but then after that, on the next line, it says QRSDEF. Now, those just happen to be the letters that those numbers in hexadecimal that I gave it happen to be. Theoretically, you can make it contain any text by writing numbers, but in the case of editing save files like we did with Castle of the Winds, you're editing binary data. So usually the file you're editing isn't going to contain text. But for the sake of example, I just created a basic text file so that I could demonstrate how my program works. So basically, chastehex is a very unique program because it allows you to read an entire file, hex dump it, or to read just a single byte, what that byte is of that address, but it also allows you to arbitrarily seek to that address, and instead of reading that address, write bytes to that address. So literally, I wrote a hex editor that runs from the command line. Now, most people don't understand the significance of this, but basically, you can use chastehex to cheat at very old video games like Castle of the Winds. Basically, you can. But that's not the only reason I made it. You can use it to generate just about any file. So if you wanted to write programs in machine code by literally just writing the bytes of machine code, you can do that. If you wanted to create executable files by creating the header of a Windows executable or a Linux ELF executable manually using my program, you can also do that. What I'm saying is that chastehex can basically do anything that you want to do. Now, not everybody is going to understand the beauty of this program I wrote. Not everybody is going to understand this program and why it's so special to me. But here's basically one thing I want to show you. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to go to my documents. Yeah, my username is Chandler Klebs on Windows because my Microsoft account still has my dead name and Microsoft won't let me change it. So, here's what we're gonna do. Wait, that's the wrong one. We're going to go to the bin folder, the .bin folder. So what you're seeing here is, yeah, okay, it's hard to see. This folder. In fact, you know what? It's easier if I just open a terminal. I'm just going to open a terminal here. We're going to do dir. These are in my user directory.bin. This is in my path. Chastehex is a Windows executable, and notice it's only 2,560 bytes. And By comparison, chastecomp, which is another program I wrote, which I'll have to cover in a separate video, um, is 13,000 bytes. It's almost 14 kilobytes because that program was written in C, whereas chastehex was actually written in assembly language. I actually wrote it in using the Windows API, and I think what I'll do is I will briefly show you the source code of this, but also notice spasm.exe. That is the Windows version of the flat assembler. I do assembly language programming on Windows, but also on Linux, on my Linux computer. I'm just on Windows right now. But the flat assembler is the program I use for all my assembly language programming. Basically, I'm a nerd who likes numbers, so I do computer programming for fun. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my documents here and Git. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Chastity's Code Cookbook. We're going to open a terminal here and we're going to do git pull. Let's see. I want to make sure, is everything up to date? Okay, yes. So now everything is up to date. It downloaded some files from my other computer basically because I was working on chapter 5 of a programming book and I had examples to make powers of 2 and Fibonacci numbers in assembly language. So that was a crazy thing. So you see a little bit of behind the scenes work because there's a book on DOS programming that I've been writing very slowly. So, but now that I've got that working, I'm going to show you the source code. So in the code and then ASM, FASM, you'll see that I have different folders here. It might be hard to read, but this folder is for DOS. This folder is for Linux 32-bit. This is Linux-64. This is 64-bit Linux. I usually don't use 64-bit Linux code. I stick with 32 because I like it. Mixed bits contains various little tests comparing files between 32 and 64-bit. And this is my Windows folder here. So all of my Windows assembly language programs are right here. So, for example, I'm just going to show a very basic hello world. I'm going to show you hello world in Windows assembly language. This is really crazy. Let's see. Now this here, this was an example I found on the Flat Assembler forums. This uses the invoke macro for write console and exit process. But that's actually not even the way I like to do things. That's actually not even the way. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to this one because this shows it a little bit differently. This is a Hello World program. This is actually Hello World, and it uses traditional assembly language. So this is the system call for write console. And I have comments for what each thing means. You basically, to call a function in Windows API, you have to push to the stack certain numbers that have certain meanings in a certain order, and then you have to call various functions that have given names that are contained within kernel 32.dll. Trust me, you're not going to understand this unless you've dabbled in assembly language and you have some experience with the Windows API. I don't know very much about it myself. But this is a small program and this displays hello world. But what I'm about to show you, I'm going to show you the program that I was using to cheat at Castle of the Winds, chastehex. The executable is here, and so is the source code. So here we're going to look at main.asm. This is the main source file, and what we're going to do here, I'm just going to make the text as big as I can. And can I turn that off? Okay. Yeah, I got rid of that. So basically, I wrote this very large program. This is a lot of source code. The text in red are comments that I wrote trying to explain my own code to myself so I won't forget. Um, so there's all kinds of assembly language, Intel assembly language instructions for the x86 type of processor. This here, it happens to be a system call to open an existing file. So it opens an existing file. There's all these different numbers that mean different things, and then it tries to check the data of what was returned from the function and know whether the file was a file handle or an error code, because it could be an error code if it couldn't open the file, such as in the case when we tried to open the file dude and it didn't exist yet. So basically, you see I've written hundreds of lines of code. This is where it writes only a single byte at a time based on the argument. So, like, I had to learn the Windows API. There are literally hundreds of lines of code here. Let's see how big this file is. This is huge. Okay, so there's like 365 lines of source code in assembly language within this file alone. And that's not even the only file. That's not even the only source file. There's also chaselib W32. W32 stands for Windows 32-bit. And this is a 6 kilobyte file. Now, this file right here is special because this is my library of functions. I created my own library of functions that I commonly use. Now, not everything in here is actually used because it was translated over from my Linux library. I have a Linux version of the same library. It is mostly the same. So this is the put string function. It saves the registers by pushing those 4 general purpose registers, and then it does this routine where it copies this register to another. It finds the length of the string by searching for the first 0 byte, and once it finds the string, then it has all the data to push the right bytes and register values to the stack, and then it calls get std handle. It does call write file, and it displays strings to the screen. That's literally how all the text in chastehex works, because I just have a bunch of strings in my program, and then it prints them for me, because I know how it works. I know how to call it, how it works. Now, these variables and this function, int string, what it does is it turns a number, whatever the EAX register contains, it turns it into a string representation of that number based on the current radix. So the default radix is 2, but it's changed to 16 for the purpose of chastehex. So basically, I wrote my own number conversion function, and it does a lot of advanced math here to make sure the number base representation is correct. Now, put int is nice because it calls int string to turn a number in the AIX register into a string, and then it calls put string to print that string that it just created. So put int is how I put my numbers to the screen. Now, string int or strint, that is what is responsible for taking the command line arguments of the program and then converting them to numbers and interpreting them as addresses or bytes to write to the address. So this function is really ultra important. It's very important. So, and of course, the main.asm file is responsible for obtaining the command line arguments, processing those. But the strint function is what is used to turn those strings from the arguments into actual numbers that the program can use and knows what it does. So basically, I wrote all this stuff here. I wrote all this assembly language stuff, and it's actually quite amazing. So that is, notice that it's 6 kilobytes for the chaselib W32 library, and the main source file is 9 kilobytes. So that's 15 kilobytes of assembly language source code. But then notice the executable file itself is 2.50 kilobytes. It's less than 3 kilobytes. That's because machine code takes less space than assembly language code. Plus, my assembly language code is filled with comments of me trying to explain my own code. So that's the basic gist of why there's the size difference. Now, keep in mind that I just showed you the Windows version. The original version of the program was made for Linux. And what you'll see here, I'm not gonna show you the whole thing because I mean, you wouldn't understand it anyway, but the source code is available on GitHub, just so you know. I can provide the link if you're interested. But I'm going to show you, well, maybe I will show the whole thing. Well, I actually have three files. I have three files here. I have organized my Linux code better than my Windows code because the Linux version is older. I made it first, and so it actually is organized, better documented what it does. Let's look at chaselib32.asm. Let's just look at this file. Let's look at what it contains. This has the same functions. It has put string. It operates in the exact same way, except it calls the Linux kernel to write text to the screen. So it does the exact same thing, except it calls the Linux API instead of the Windows API. But otherwise, it's identical. And then all the other functions, int string, uh, put int, and strint or string int, which is down here somewhere. Yeah, yeah, there it is. So it's not modified. It's not, and there's also functions for put space and put line that puts a space to the output or puts a new line to the output. Those are common operations, so I made special functions for those. But basically, the code is 99% the same as the Windows version. I just changed the system call to use the Windows standard call when I made the Windows version of the header. That's the only difference. But they're both 32-bit Intel assembly, so very little change was needed. So assembly language is portable if you have a set of utility functions and you make the slight modifications you need for each operating system. But functions that call any other functions that don't require the API for the operating system but only operate on the data, that is portable. So I have functions that are portable and operate identically between Windows and Linux. Now I know this is a lot of information. It's kind of freaky. Oh, and also the Linux version, this won't run on, this is not going to run on Windows because this is a Linux program. But notice the Linux program is only 1295 bytes. And part of the reason is the Linux is very optimal. Linux is very optimal when it comes to executable files. And the Linux programming environment is just so much better than Windows. Windows is actually a whole lot harder. It's so much harder. And I'm just going to turn back on my camera here for a second. Before I end this video, I want to explain to you why I got into assembly language, why I've been enjoying it so much. Because even though it looks complicated, see, I'm a C programmer mostly, but assembly language really helps you become a better programmer. I did it for the challenge, and I wrote this program first in C. I wrote the first version of chastehex in C, and I have a C version I can still use. But the assembly version runs faster. It loads up, opens the file, reads, and then writes the file, and then closes the file instantaneously. It's so blazingly fast. And the executable files are small. We're talking like less than 2 or 3 kilobytes. The files are small, they're very fast, the programs are efficient because I spent hours getting the code right and having to learn which system call does what. And was it worth the time? Was it worth spending 8 hours in a row, you know, multiple nights in a row working on tiny bits of the program? Like when I made the Linux version, I'm like, okay, well, how do I get the command line arguments? Okay, so how do I open the file? What functions do I call? What system calls do I use? I had to look up the documentation. I'm using the Chromium OS. documentation for the syscall numbers, and I don't even know what I'm doing, but I got the program working, doing exactly what I want. Basically, I had to look up the system call for everything. Okay, how do I write to the screen? How do I open a file? How do I read the file? How do I write the file? How do I access command line arguments? So I had to look up all these system calls. It took hours of research and then writing the code and like, okay, wait, why isn't this working? It was time consuming. It was very time consuming to get it working. But I have to tell you now, the time investment was worth it. And that's because chastehex is a very neat tool that, yes, it can be used to cheat at Cast the Winds, as I showed earlier in this video. But basically, chastehex is a unique thing because I have never seen a program in existence that operates that way. Um, There are hex editors that will load up a file with a graphical interface, and you can see the bytes and you can type new bytes into it and see that, which is great. Don't get me wrong, I love traditional hex editors. Like I used to use XVI32 on Windows, and I'll use like the Bless hex editor or whatever, or WX hex editor on Linux. I like traditional hex editors because they let you modify these files, and that's fun. But one thing that none of those hex editors can do is they can't just run from a batch script. You can run from a batch script on Windows or a bash script on Linux because this program, it doesn't accept user input from standard input. Basically, you only operate it via command line arguments. That means if you have a scripting language that can run commands on your operating system, you can run chastehex the same way that you would run in Linux, say ls cat echo rm to remove a file, cp to copy a file, mv to move a file. Just like you would run Linux commands on a Linux system, you can run chastehex as a command as part of your shell scripts and use it to cheat at video games. Of course, there are other reasons to use a hex editor, mostly in the field of reverse engineering or creating your own custom headers for image files or executable files. Say, for example, you want to do assembly language programming and you want to have complete control over your ELF header in Linux, for example. Now, I haven't learned how to do that yet. I'm not that advanced yet with the assembly, and I don't know much about the file formats. I just use a flat assembler and it generates the executable header for me. And so now I have a program working. But you can, since all files are binary and hexadecimal is just a short form of the binary numeral system, you can, if you download chastehex, you can run this program to create any file. Because if you know the bytes you want the file to contain and you know what addresses you want it to contain those bytes, you can generate any file. Now, why would you do this? Well, basically, you typically wouldn't do that. Instead, you would probably use it to cheat at video games. Because the way video games work, especially in the 80s and 90s, the older games, is that you had save files. You would open a game, you'd play for a while, you would save a save file, and that save file would be binary data. And the addresses in most of these games didn't change. In some modern games, the addresses of the data changes every time you save the file. But in older games, when the hardware was very simple and there wasn't very much memory available, a game like Castle of the Winds was designed very statically in that, well, it saves these bytes to this file for a save file in this specific order. So once you identify, oh, these bytes contain the stats of my character, you then have the address. Once you know that starting address, you can use chastehex to modify the save file. In fact, if you can get Castle of the Winds running on your system, however you do it, whatever emulator you have to use, like I did, I used OTVDM to run it on Windows 11. You could literally go to my place in the video, see the batch script that shows the addresses and the hex values that it's using, and run those exact same commands with my program, and max out your character's experience points and stats. And then you can play the game, destroying all the enemies, exploring the dungeons, collecting all the items, buying everything in the shop, do whatever you want to do in the game. So basically, chastehex is a program that I wrote for fun to test my assembly language skills, but also I wrote my own tool which can be used to cheat at video games because I'm a nerd and that's the kind of things you do. In fact, I often have more fun programming an assembly language and hacking old video games than I do actually playing the video games the way I'm supposed to. And part of that is because, look, I'm an adult. I have very little time. I work a full time job. I take care of my mother a lot. I don't usually get very much sleep. In fact, I should be sleeping right now. I'm going to be going to bed right after this, I promise. But because I'm an adult with very little time who doesn't really have time for video games very much, I find that by cheating in video games, editing the save files, and just making my character powerful so I can enjoy the storyline of the game, that adds value to the game for me because when I just want to play the storyline of, say, like, for example, a Final Fantasy game, um, I want to enjoy the story of it, but I don't want the frustration of just constantly dying every time the monsters kill me. So I just like to enjoy the story and make the game easy. So basically, cheating at video games can be used to make the game easier so you can play the game for the music or the storyline or just the beautiful graphics. Now, don't get me wrong, I like a challenge and I like doing things the hard way sometimes. But if I want a challenge, there's always the summer language programming, and it's been a lot of a challenge. But chastehex is complete; it's final. Now, if I do any updates to chastehex, it'll probably be optimizing this bit of assembly code here to save a few bytes of data, whatever. But the operation of the program is complete. It does exactly what it's intended to. First argument, you give it, name of the file. Second argument, the address. All the arguments after that are bytes to write to that address. Chastehex can theoretically be used to cheat at almost any video game from the 80s or 90s, but you can also use it to modify specific bytes of configuration files or executable files, especially your own if you do programming for fun. So that's all I really have to say about that for now. But basically, I just did an hour-long rant and a demonstration showing you what chastehex is, and also what Castle of the Winds is, which is an old Norse mythology video game that I used to play a lot. And it's a lot of fun to play. But now that I have chastehex, I have proven that I can write a program that works in DOS, Windows, and Linux. I have the exact same program, same operation. The Linux version is perhaps more optimized just because I'm a Linux user by heart. I'm just on Windows because this laptop with Windows has the camera, and I want to show you some things. But basically, I'm a Linux user and I do my programming in C and assembly language for 32-bit Linux. But I recently dabbled in DOS programming and Windows 32-bit API programming, and it's beautiful. I will say this though, programming for Windows was actually a hell of a lot harder than programming in Linux. And that's because in Linux, the system calls are more standard. The Linux kernel calls are just easier to work with. And all you have to do is load registers and call interrupt 128. That's all you have to do. It's not even hard in Linux. DOS is similar to Linux, but you have to run it in a DOS emulator, and there's limitations on the memory, and you have to download Ralph Brown's interrupt list. Yes, Ralph Brown was a guy who maintained a list of all the DOS system calls. There's a lot of text files. We're talking 8 megabytes of text file data that I had to sort through just to find the system calls I wanted. It took forever, but I'm really glad I recorded this video just because I wanted to introduce people to the idea that yes, you can play Castle of the Winds on Windows 11 if you install OTVDM. And you can also hack your character's stats by using the program I wrote. So that's it. I don't know if anybody will get any enjoyment out of this video or not, or if anybody will even understand it. But if you've ever played Castle of the Winds, like on old computers, if you know about Castle of the Winds, the Norse mythology game, just leave me a comment. Let me know you also played this game because not too many people know about this game. But it was a really great game back in its day of the 90s when it was 3.1, 286. Man, those were the days. And also, there is another game that's similar to Castle of the Winds. It's usually text-based. It's called NetHack. Now, NetHack is a little bit like Castle of the Winds. It's similar in that it's randomized dungeon exploration, but NetHack is much more difficult. It's much harder to play because I haven't figured out what keys do what. You can't, it doesn't use the mouse. You can't point and click and navigate your way. So you have to memorize a whole bunch of keyboard commands to do it. But NetHack is cool. The concept is cool and it's very similar gameplay. But I feel like Castle of the Winds has really good graphics, especially for a game from the 90s. So that's pretty much it. Play Castle of the Winds if you can get it running on your system. Um, you can download it off the internet, but I also have the files, and the game is now freeware. The author said so. It is legal. If I were to share the files with you, it is now legal because the author said so. The programmer who made the game said it's now freeware because doesn't care about that game anymore. Has newer games he makes money off of. So I can give you Castle of the Winds. You can install OTVDM, get 16-bit Windows games running on modern Windows, theoretically on Linux if you can get it to work. I'm not sure. I don't know how. I haven't succeeded yet. But you can play Castle of the Winds, and also you can download chastehex. I'm going to put the link to my chastehex repository in the description of this video when I upload it, so that you can download the program, you can view all of the source code. You can download the source code or the executable file just to run the program and see what it does. And it's free, open source, GPL3, all of that good stuff. So I have made my program. I released it basically as open source software, and you can use it for whatever purposes you want. Literally, there are no limitations. If you know the hexadecimal numeral system and you want to modify files, you can do anything at all. So that's that. That's all I have to say for now, and I just need to put in the description when I upload this video. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk about my program and about a Norse mythology game called Castle of the Winds. Have a good day.